All right. If you got anything stupid to say, now's your chance.
I like something.
Wow.
I
Okay.
like sandwiches.
All right. I'm going to hit record on the podcast. I know we talked about using other intro music, but
We did?
we started to, but the audio wasn't working. And so we ended up with the usual music.
Well, this is the best intro song ever.
Yes.
I'm a fan.
If I don't say so myself.
It's a Dangerous Conversations podcast. We got a running theme where I try not to say in the middle of the title. There's a perfect pause right in the middle spot for it.
How you doing so far?
So far, so good.
All right, good job.
We have a guest today. Hi, Terri. Terri's
Hi, guys.
joining us.
How you doing? Welcome aboard.
Terri's my
Thanks for having
friend
me.
and my coworker and Liam's friend and
Yes.
former coworker.
Former
Former
student. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's like 6 whole guitar lessons that I did terrible at.
Nice. So everyone,
I disagree. I think you did great.
everyone, pull out your guitar. We're going to start with a recital.
Right? All right, this is an E major. Let's do this.
Yes. So we were talking before the podcast about what we're going to be drinking, and Terri, what did you say? You thought you had a half bottle of?
I could probably rustle up about a half bottle of Sambuca if I really tried in this dry household.
Yes.
Last opened in 1978, maybe. But
Wow.
we're just
I'm sure it's
sticking
still
with the
good.
water.
So that got me thinking. I've got a bottle of drink that my grandfather. It was his favorite drink, and when he passed away, I believe in 1986.
What did that say on it?
Cognac. Don't worry, I'm going to pull it out of the box and really show it off. They
like,
yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it looks like it's like you kept it in the package, like people keep their Star Wars.
Oh yeah, the
figurines
collectible box.
If you open it, it'll
Yes.
ruin its value.
This is when you buy alcohol in the 80s. This is what you got, and
You got a box.
so if I did some quick math, is that 35 years?
In the 80s,
Yes.
20 and 20,
Yeah. So we're
it would be
over 30. So this is
30
over 30
30
years old.
something. Yeah.
And they bought it and they tipped some out on the at the gravesite, I believe, or where they scattered the ashes.
One for the homies.
Yes, and they all had a sip, and that was the first and last time they ever had this cognac.
Wow.
And I'm going to take it out of the box, and this is what I'm going to drink for
You're
this
looking
discussion.
for dangerous situations.
But so here's one thing for total transparency. I've got my cup for my cognac, and I got my spare cup for my follow-up drink in case. Now I tried
Something
this before.
goes horribly wrong.
It's not like wine where you're like, oh, is that 30-year-old? That's awesome. No, I don't think this keeps well. So my backup drink.
Gotcha. Liberty call.
I'm
Nice.
not going to pour it until I pour this one.
Good.
This is the best podcast ever, by the way. They just keep
I
getting
approve.
better. It's got a medallion.
Well,
Mm.
some people say medallion, some people say jewelry.
Yes, it's
Jewelry.
got bling. It's
It's got a name tag on it.
3D name. Yeah, this is a fine bottle of cognac.
You can tell by all the accoutrement that the bottle comes with. It smells like cognac.
I get the water out of here. It's so hot in my basement. My ice is already melted. All right, I have poured myself a drink.
Good job.
Liam, what are you drinking?
I just ran to the kitchen real fast and grabbed myself a little Sierra Nevada, and so we'll see how that turns out. So far, so good. It's drinkable.
And I'm drinking water with Terri as well.
Well, I always have my water back. You got to have the water back.
Yeah.
So
Plenty of ice in that one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We better in this room temperature business.
All right.
Like milk or cold.
I think I already missed the cheers, so I'm gonna have a sip
Oh, sorry.
of
Okay.
34-year-old.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Do it, man.
Oh, I must have killed my taste buds, or maybe I've got the COVID, because it's not bad. It tastes fine. I know I tried it 5 years ago, and I'm like, whoa, okay. That's how that went.
Good times.
All right. I think we're done with our intro.
Good.
Good.
It was a spectacular.
Yes. So that's our transition music. So we're here. We're here with Terri. I wanted Terri to come and share a story that she shared with me over a beer.
Or 6.
Or 6. There were many beers involved back when you were drinking.
Maybe 4 times.
Yes. So
That made me sound like an alcoholic. I'm not. It's just not tonight.
Just short periods of time.
So you
Only when you're around Nick, right?
Yes. In the early 2000s, you worked at the stock exchange?
Did. Downtown Manhattan.
Downtown Manhattan, which puts you in downtown Manhattan on September 11th, 2001.
Did.
And so that's what I'd love to hear your story again. So September 11th, 2001. What time did you get up and go into work in the morning?
Yeah, it was a little bit of an unusual day because I drove into work, which I can count on one hand the number of times I had driven to work. I was a commuter, took the train into Grand Central, the subway downtown to Wall Street. But I had driven that day because I was supposed to go to a friend's mother-in-law's funeral after work. So drove in. I got to work a little after 7:30ish, which was pretty normal. Perfect day outside. Beautiful.
How far did you live?
I lived in Westchester County, which is the county that borders the Bronx to the north.
Okay.
So if you're from Manhattan, from New York City, you call that upstate. But to most of New York, that is a downstate county.
Yeah. Like they call everything north of LA, Northern California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
So you get there at work a little after 7?
Yeah, probably a little bit after that. We had some training going on, setting up the training room, getting ready for that. There's an interior room on the floor. The floor that was not my floor. It was a different floor.
Which floor are you on?
So this was, my office was on the 13th floor. I was on only the 8th floor or something like that. So not too high up.
How far was the stock exchange from World Trade Center?
So it's only a block off of Broadway and then down 2 blocks essentially south from kind of that block that the World Trade Center's offset from Broadway going west.
So a couple blocks away.
Yeah, 2 blocks. Yep, pretty close.
Cool.
But yeah, so
cool's the wrong word.
So
I'm going to try and not use the word cool ever again for the rest of this podcast.
No, but yeah, so it was a nice day. We were in an interior room, so no windows or anything. And someone had come in, right before 9, right? So that first plane hit, I want to say it was 8:46. And someone came in just a minute or 2 later and said, hey, one of the planes hit the Trade Center, one of the towers. And we're like, oh, that's crazy. It's so nice out. And there was a few of us in the room. Everybody's thinking Cessna or something. Something happened with the pilot. Kind of knows that. There's something like that. It's awful. So we left that training room. I went back up to my floor, which had these 2 giant TVs sort of side by side. And at that point, there were a few of us sort of milling around the TVs and just watching one of the TVs was zoomed in and showed up close the North Tower, and the other one was more panned out. And as we're watching, that's when the second plane came in and hit the South Tower, and it was you weren't sure you saw what you saw, so I was like, was that a commercial airline? Did anyone else see that? And when it hit, it's weird because you're watching it on TV, but you could hear it, you could feel it, because at this point now there's windows, right? You could see it, and almost immediately it seemed like debris just kind of raining 3 some odd blocks away. So, it was the kind of thing where nobody was really sure what they saw. Obviously, the newscasters were. I don't remember a lot, and I think that's sort of a theme that we'll probably come back to quite often. There were some moments that are so clear and sort of ingrained in my memory, just these flashes here and there, and there are other things that are just completely giant swaths of time where I have no idea. But yeah, I remember that initial part. I remember thinking that something, like, what are we supposed to do? And is this happening? And what, like, what's next? And I went to my office, and I remember calling my parents just to be like, this is crazy. Like, did you see, are you watching the news? And they didn't answer. And I didn't leave a message. I was like, okay, I'll try again in a bit. And then that's when our alarms went off in our building, and they started evacuating us, because even though it was still very soon after, it was like, hey, there were commercial planes that have been determined. Who knows what's happening? This building is a target. Get people out.
Yeah. And
kind of on top of that, at the time, the Exchange had 2 floors in the South Tower. Like, we had grown, building space was at a premium. So our regulatory unit was located in the South Tower. And when the first plane hit the North Tower, you hear all the stories about people telling people to go back to your desks. It's fine. Like, we'll contain it. Don't leave. The Exchange security guards, a guy named Ollie, who I actually played softball with, he evacuated our 2 floors and told them to get out, and said, everybody go to the Exchange, like, just get over there. So we lost no one from the Exchange, which is, definitely a blessing. But so we're all outside the Exchange, kind of everybody's accounting for everybody. And then they unevacuated us. They said, you know what, the air quality obviously is terrible at this point. People get back inside. You're safer inside. And I was like, I am safer off this island. Like, I'm not going back inside. And I was there's 3 of us and then 2 more, but the
real quick, sorry. They were saying this after the second plane hit, and they were telling you to go back into the stock exchange building?
Yes, but they weren't going to send us back to the upper floors, but because of, this is one of the things where I'm not exactly sure how much time had passed in that bit, right? Like, we were out there. It didn't feel like a long while, but long enough for them to have some kind of something like knowledge of something and said, get back in. And I don't, who knows what they knew. Nobody kind of knew how to process any of that, I don't think. So I think they were just afraid of what else was hitting and maybe things falling, or I don't know. And a lot of people did go back in and were on the floor, and that was a pretty safe space and structure and kind of reinforced or whatnot, I guess. But, my crew, the 4 of us, there's 5 of us at that time, kind of walked down. I worked for a consulting company at the time. I didn't at that point work for the Exchange directly. And we had another account at Citibank, which was down Wall Street. And so we decided to walk down there, just make sure everybody's there. And one of my good friends from college also worked for the same company. She was at the Citibank account, but she wasn't there. Her family, worked for the PBA, or the SBA, Sergeant Benevolence Association. And so she had gone over there, but I didn't understand it at that point, why or what was happening. And kind of what I'm going to fast forward to when I tell people about September 11th and everything else, I think it's really important to understand the people that were lost. And this friend from college, her brother was working at the Trade Center. It was his second day in the job, working for Union 3, which was the elevator union, the electricians union. Finishing college at night, just turned 21, second day on the job. She knew Tommy was there. She went to the SBA first and probably would have headed to the towers to go look for her brother had she not been held back. And Tommy never came home. So he was one of the ones that was gone. And again, 21 years old, and everybody knows somebody. Like you can't, downtown Manhattan, nobody didn't know someone, or and in the days and the weeks that followed, you learned more, like, oh man, that person too, or oh, I went to school with that person. And one of the very clear memories was in the day, I think it was the next day that followed, we were hanging up flyers, because that's what you did, because everybody, there was a feeling that there were so many people trapped and they were going to need help and were going to be taken to hospitals and needed to be identified, when really nobody was recovered. But there was all that hope, right? So flyers everywhere, all over, so in case someone saw it and saw somebody wandering, didn't know who they were, saw them in a hospital or something like that. So as you're hanging up these flyers, you're seeing the people you went to school with, the person that you met through a mutual friend at dinner 2 weeks before, in one case, or just coworkers, children. It was surreal. I mean, it was these walls of paper faces who weren't going home. So I know I kind of was all over the place, but
no, that's fun.
That's how it started. And to me, Tommy is the story I tell about just a really good kid, whole life in front of him, poli-sci major at school, dated his girlfriend for 6 years, on the way to marriage, like all of these things, and cut short. And from just, from a great family, sisters who loved him, parents who absolutely adored him. And it's devastating.
What was the kind of the word around the office when kind of everything was going down and you were there, and you called you back and said, it's safer to stay here? What was kind of the word around the office? Like, what were people saying? Was it, did anyone have a clue about who it might have been, or, what was the main thing?
So we didn't go back into the office. So I missed that period of what people were saying. I was very isolated with those 4 that I was with. And
where'd you guys go with those 4 people? Where did you cruise around or just get out?
So they ended up shutting down subways. So we were cruising. So we kind of walked down to Wall Street, checked out this account. And during that whole period, it's like your voicemails are ticking off on your phone because the phone lines are jammed. Nobody could get in. Like calls weren't coming through, but you could see the voicemails. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14. And excuse me. But we did get, I think that's when we got a hold of our home office, was somebody at Citibank was able to call this place and say, call your parents or call families or call whatever. But, after we had done that, we walked south. So Wall Street kind of cuts down to the water. And we did that. We kind of circled back and up, and we're coming up by the South Street Seaport. I forget the name of the street, but so kind of like a straight shot, right? And at that point, I remember the jets flying, and I remember people kind of dropping what they were carrying and running and crying and screaming because no one knew what those jets were. Like, they were the good guys, but at that point, we didn't know. We're on the street. Yeah. We have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, wow.
Right.
And there was a van that had the radio on, and we stopped and we're listening to this van, and we're looking up at the towers who are like straight shot. We're back a few blocks now. We're watching the towers, listening to the radio, and I can't remember a single word I heard from that, but I'll never forget standing there and watching that. And that's when the South Tower started to come down. And that it's indescribable. I mean, your brain can't process it. Like, it just, you're watching it. And I'm sure it was seconds. It felt like an eternity. And we're far enough away to know, like, hey, wait, maybe people got out. Maybe, or did they get out? I don't know. And then you're standing there and you don't know anything. And that's when someone was kind of like, go, we got to go. Because that's, like all of that debris. So we had to kind of cut a side street. And one of the guys I was with did work in the South Tower. So he was basically cemented to the ground. You could, like, we had to, like, physically kind of move him along.
Yeah.
And then it was just quiet. Like, I'm sure there was hysteria, but it felt quiet. Like, it just, we're walking without saying anything at that point. We're out of view. We kind of cut down a side road, and we didn't really have a plan of where we were going. We were walking.
Where did you end up, like, right after that?
We actually ended up, we were in the meatpacking district, I guess, somewhere around there. And there was a shop, and they were handing out water, and they had a little TV set up. And watching that little TV is where I learned that the Pentagon had also been hit. And so we're trying to, like, just make sense of it. We have this water. And then my brother finally gets through on the phone at that point. So this is all, like, maybe now we're an hour 15, hour 20 into the whole thing. And, he's like, I'm coming down there. Yeah, like, you're not, because you can't. But just, he was kind of just frantic, but controlled, but, like so many people probably in that moment.
Where was he trying to come from?
He also lived in Westchester.
Okay.
So, so just north of the city. I think he was actually supposed to be in Manhattan that day to fight a parking ticket or something. So apparently he was in the middle of a haircut, and he jumped out of the chair and was trying to call since then. And he's like, I'm sitting here, my hair's half cut. I'm coming to the city. And, calmer heads prevailed. He didn't try to get into the city. He wasn't going to be able to get into. I was able to call my parents and let them know that he got a hold of me. So that was good.
Yeah. What was the thing that you, I guess, take away from that? What is it? What's the prevailing thought that you kind of get from that experience? Would you look back on that whole experience and then you think about it now? Is there kind of a lesson learned for you personally from that, or anything like that?
No, I mean, it never, anybody that's experienced sort of any big event in their life, whether it's, death of a parent or, any kind of thing, there's sort of that before time and that after time. And that became certainly a defining moment for me in terms of when I processed anything in my head. That happened before September 11th, or that happened after September 11th. Like, it was a thing.
Yeah.
But learning wise, there's going to be a funny story out of it. I was wearing heels that day, and that didn't last very long. So I was walking barefoot through Manhattan. So I never wore heels to work again. So there's that. But no, I mean, obviously there's the cherish your people close to you, your loved ones, because it's crazy. I mean, one of those clear images that I have of that time and just walking was just a singed, sort of dusty photograph on the ground, very clearly from somebody's desk, right? This was the picture they had of their family at their desk, and here it is on the ground. And so that's sort of a powerful moment to kind of look back on and just be sad, and like it makes me sad to think about still. Everyone, I'm sure, but a loss that is still hard to comprehend. But yeah, there's actually associate lots of events or things with music, and there's a local New York City band called Shillelagh Law, Irish band by heritage, but like kind of rock. Mm-hmm. And they have a song called Christmas in New York, and I encourage everybody to check it out, because that song sort of, it was written in that time period, as September passes into October, November, December, about just a reflection on those months. And it kind of hits the nail on the head. And it's a great song. It recognizes just kind of everybody who was lost, everybody who contributed, kind of how everybody came together, and how it's okay to still try to move forward, right? Like, you can't be stuck in that.
Yeah.
But don't forget it either.
Is there anything that you do on September 11th, since, it's coming up here in a week and a half? Is there anything you do for that day, or just kind of just another day and you just kind of don't think about it? Or
yeah, it's hard to not think about it so much, especially with social media a bit. It's always sort of that double-edged sword. I want to see that people remember. At the same time, it's hard to read, or
Yeah.
For a lot of years, I volunteered on that day to do something, in remembrance of Tommy. And in the last few years, I was in New York. An organization started that specifically was for that. Just, here it was bagging food, or, like making these food packages for homeless, but it was a 9/11, focused on that and remembering that and trying to take a negative to a positive in some kind of way. But these last 2 years have been different, right? Because I'm not in New York, and it's weird. It's, I don't feel like I should not be in New York, especially on that day.
Well, you're there now. How are you planning to?
It's different. It's upstate New York, and upstate is actual real upstate versus Westchester.
Right.
So I'm in Saratoga County right now. But I moved out of I stopped working at the exchange in 2002. The beginning of 2002, I moved back toward home, which was where I am now in Saratoga. I took a job up there. I think it gave my family some level of comfort. It wasn't that I was running from that. It was just life circumstances had changed quite a bit. And that was where I was going to be. And that first September 11th, I also wasn't in New York. I mean, I was in New York, but not in New York City. And just from being in Manhattan to being in upstate New York, it's not like we all corner the market on some kind of tragedy, but the level of not quite understanding, not that people could be faulted for that, right? They didn't live it. That's understandable. But I remember when I left there, and people, I only was there for a year until I moved back to New York. And on the goodbye card, it was like, watch out for low flying planes or something like that. And it's like,
wow.
It's just a different thing, right? I might as well have been in California, being in upstate New York, which is what I feel this year as well. But so long story short, try to volunteer. Last couple of years, I've gone to the firehouse in Pacific Beach. They have a 9/11 memorial there. Just
in San Diego, or
in San Diego, in Pacific Beach, yeah. And bring there's a little coffee shop near me, and get a box of whatever and leave it with the firemen there, and kind of just be near the memorial with names I know, right, and see that, and it sort of gives me that little bit of being in New York.
Mm.
Yeah, we saw it. I was in California, and I had the same initial reaction. I got my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. She called me at 6 something in the morning, saying an airplane flew into the World Trade Center, and I thought a Cessna, like what hit the Empire State Building 70 years ago. So that's the first thing I thought too, and I went back to sleep because I didn't know what was going on. And then we're seeing it on TV, but all the cameras are aiming up, so we're looking at at the World Trade Center, smoke's coming out. And we see all of that, but the camera's not aimed down. We don't see what is there, 1 million people? How many, people are in downtown Manhattan on a morning work day?
At rush hour, essentially.
Yeah, so and most people outside of New York never really saw that side of things. We could imagine what was going on, but there was this time, there was this car crash I saw. There's this YouTube kid got demonetized and drove his McLaren the wrong way down the freeway and killed a mom and her kid in a head-on collision in the fast lane. And I drove by a couple minutes after that happened, and during rush hour, the freeway was stopped, everyone standing on the freeway, and the looks on, all I saw was smoke, from a car, and I'd seen accidents before, but I could tell the looks on everyone's faces that some shit had gone down. And that's what I think of, the people who actually live through a earth-shattering, what's the point, just everything about what you expect life to be all goes out the window. I can't imagine.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's like I feel like from my perspective is that day kind of changed the mindset of at least America, in the world that I know. So there was a sense of, kind of the future was wide open. You could do, you could pursue your dreams and whatever. And then after that, after 9/11, it's just like everything became just so fear-based. Like it's, it really changed the mindset of the community. I felt it didn't seem like you felt safe anymore. Like you didn't know kind of what tomorrow was going to bring. And it really changed, I think, the outlook and the way that we react to things now. I think that has a lot to do with kind of where we're at socially now. It's just that edge of fear hasn't really let go of us. It's just kind of there. And I think the reaction of the media when they saw how people were responding to it, I think they kind of saw a moment of like, here's something that people definitely paying attention to and they react to. So it definitely, I think, like you said, it's before 9/11 is a marker, and after, it's definitely the world has changed, at least in the United States, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, I was 24 at that time, and you grow up faster. I feel like a bit. Mm-hmm. I think in your early 20s, there's a certain feeling of being invincible anyway. Mm-hmm. And as a country, I think we feel, we had the tendency to feel a bit invincible. Yeah. And this destroyed some of that.
Yeah.
But all of, the days and the weeks and the months after, you can say what you want about politicians, about Bush and about Giuliani and whatever else. But those guys, man, I mean, I've never felt a sense of community amongst a giant swath of people as I did. And the months, which stretch into years even, right? I mean, it felt different. Like there was, we're united against a common enemy as opposed to now where it's a bit more, divisive.
I'll say that for us outside of New York, that only lasted for 2 or 3 weeks. The united, forget the things that don't matter, realizing that, politics and politicians, and that's not what matters. That's not what our country is or our community is. And, unite around everyone, that maybe 3 weeks before it turned into just, hey, we need to attack each other's political side because this is starting to, okay, enough. Whatever it was, it was sad when it went.
And maybe, not everyone felt the same way. Maybe I was oblivious to some of that, but to me, I felt it longer. And, people were going to memorial services for months and months and months later too. So that probably had a bit to do with it. And actually one of those memorial services, going back to Tommy, his body was recovered, they believe, within a couple days, right? Somewhere between the 11th and 13th. But his family didn't know. And at some point, they had decided to move forward with a memorial service because they hadn't heard and felt it was the right thing to do. And I had to go back and look it up because to me, it felt like months, but apparently it was the very beginning of October. So it wasn't as long as I had originally anticipated. But so they decided to go forward with this. And the night before the service, they had the police officers come to their door, firemen, I'm sure I'm getting some of these details wrong, but came to their door and said that they had found Tommy's remains. He was with firemen. They felt he was trying to help people. And just that to me was kind of the biggest miracle coming out of that day, if that makes sense. Just to have that closure the day before, you're essentially laying your son to rest. So
yeah,
it's good to have that.
Yeah,
for sure.
But
There you go.
this is rough not to have a drink.
seriously, I don't think I've ever done that before. It's the first.
So we're telling of it.
Sober.
No, it's I can't imagine what that's like. For me, I was on the West Coast and I was actually living in Stockton, working at a music store, and the store didn't open until like 10 a.m. So, and I think I rolled in a little bit late. I was like 10:15, and I walked in, and my boss and my coworker, I walked in, hey guys, how's it going? And they're like, dude, we just been attacked, and then they went through everything, and I'm like, shut up, get the hell out of here. I just thought they were pranking me or something, but just the look on their face, like, it was like, I'm like, oh crap. And then, they actually had internet at the store, and we were, kind of trying to browse around to see what had happened. And I was just like in shock the whole time. Like, I kept waiting for someone to tell me, no, we're just, it's a joke. It didn't really happen. And it's just like, because nothing like that had ever happened in my lifetime, And so it's just, it was such a shocking event that you just couldn't believe that had really happened. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's still times now where I'm like, wait, did that really happen? And then I'll smell metal burning and it kind of takes you right back. Yep. That happens.
Really? Interesting.
Oh, now, yeah, it's sort of like one of those weird kind of crazy flashbacks. And I'm again standing in a black suit, barefoot with like dust and like dirty and
crazy.
But, and it's weird, some of the things that come out of it. So because I was walking barefoot and we were going to, at some point we developed a plan. I was with my friends Joe and Gary and Karen, and we were going to go to Joe's brother-in-law in Stuyvesant, which is east and up a bit, and he probably wasn't home. We didn't know. We couldn't get through on the phones or whatever, but maybe we could go there and hang out and watch the news and just, we couldn't get off the city. They closed the train, like the subways were shut down, everything was shut down. We couldn't get off the island. So that was our plan. And when we got there, he wasn't home. So we decided to hang out and wait. And right next to Stuyvesant Town, there was a Foot Locker. And Gary's like, hey, I have cash for me. Let's see if they have it, some flip-flops. I was like, oh, that's great. Thank you. We go in, and they had shut the store down to only letting a couple people in at a time. I don't know why. I don't remember if there was not electricity or I don't remember. So we're in there, and I bought like they were this pair of like just the cheapest shoes I could find, which were a pair of Champion like pleather white sneakers or $35 sold, right? And I never wore those sneakers a minute after that day, but I kept them until I moved to San Diego, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So it's like weird little things like that.
Do you not wear them because of the memories attached to them, or just didn't ever have a use for them?
I'm sure I had a use for them because I had other plain white sneakers that I wore all the time. But I don't know. It didn't feel like the right thing.
It seems
I don't know
like
if that makes any sense.
not that it's sentimental, but yeah, you don't just take something that you get
weird.
from like that and then walk to 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee wearing them. Didn't you also say that you always carry cash now after that? That you didn't have cash and the credit card machine wasn't working?
Mm.
Yeah, that's why it's good that Gary had cash. But yeah, at least most of the time I try to have cash. Some little bit of it. Yeah. I mean, that night, by the time the subways opened back up and everything else, I think I didn't get home until 5:30-ish, 6-ish. And that's the part that's sort of grave for me. I know I went into my apartment. My roommate worked for CBS, one of the news stations. She wasn't home, clearly. She's covering whatever she needs to do. And I remember sitting in this kind of oversized seersucker chair for hours, just not moving. And we had another roommate too, and she was, I don't remember her being there, but maybe she was, or maybe she was at her boyfriend's or in and out. But I felt like I was there for days, but I really think I got up and went the next day and went and visited the Ashtons, and that's how we got the flyers going and everything else. But just sitting there and taking a couple of phone calls, not even very many, and watching the news. And Peter Jennings, I don't know, he just always sort of sticks out in my head. That was the station I was watching, was the one that he was on, and learning about Cantor Fitzgerald, and along with the rest of the world, like, I was in the finance industry. I had heard of them, but didn't know much about them. And I remember Peter Jennings sort of like stumbling over their name and then learning who they were with the rest of the world, and just kind of that immeasurable loss that that company faced.
You want to share that story? I think I know who they are, but...
I'm sorry. Yeah, they were like a brokerage firm.
Yeah, were they the ones that lost almost every employee?
Yeah, some crazy percentage, like 90% of their employees or something. They were on one of the top floors.
Yeah.
Of the North Tower. So yeah, they lost a lot.
Would you move back to New York and live in that area again?
Yeah, I mean, after that, I went back. I moved back there in 2003. And I worked there until I moved to San Diego 2 years ago. Back at the exchange, I moved from Westchester County to Rockland County, which is a little further north. And this time it's on the border of New Jersey. So now I'm on the other side of the river, which means my train to get to work goes through New Jersey and into the Freedom Tower today. But that's where the train goes to Hoboken. You take essentially subway across the river. So every day, twice a day, I would, walk by the remembrance pools, and I think I think it's a fitting memorial. I'm happy that they did it. It's beautiful, really. It's just the idea of the waterfalls and the footprints, and it's a tough thing to know what to do and what the families would want, but it's a place they can go and,
I feel like they've got a place to kind of like like you would go to a cemetery kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. And every year they do the blue lights to the sky, which it's really moving, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but it's just kind of the lights up to the heavens. And this year, actually, they were not going to do it because of COVID.
That's what I heard.
That's right.
It seemed crazy, but it's getting done. So the Tunnels to Towers Foundation, which is an organization that was started for, I should remember his name, but I can't remember his name on the fireman. They're sponsoring it or doing it or making sure it happens.
Gotcha.
It's good. But yeah, I'd go back to New York. I mean, it's hard to beat the weather in San Diego, but
Yeah.
I was going to go someplace else. It wouldn't be so bad to be back there.
Cool. That's a, very, very intense story for sure.
I apologize if I was rambling a bit.
No.
No. That's what we love here. We love the rambling. That's where the gold is.
The gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange how much everyone, like, we watch the TV, and this is back when newspapers were a thing. The internet was around, but yeah, just the next week everyone spent trying to learn. I don't know if we're all trying to make sense of it. Certainly, there's... Well, to the point, I didn't know anyone directly affected. I can't imagine the need for information for someone who knew people who were missing. Mm-hmm. But we were the outsiders. We were feeling that how dare you do this to our countrymen, not the how dare you do this to our friends. So.
Yeah, but even myself, I felt like a bit of an outsider. Just my brother wasn't killed, my child wasn't killed. Whatever, my parent, whatever. And so it's like, who am I to try to mourn? I don't have any idea what it's like.
Yeah.
And I was at my friend's house, and all of our family's there, and they're, in those first hours, you're still like, everybody's on taking rotation, calling the phone number just in case a rescuer is near and hears that phone. So that was a constant thing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I at that moment, I felt like I wanted to help, like that everybody wanted to help. And that was like everyone. You couldn't find a single person that didn't want to help, right? And
I can't even...
Nobody knew what to do.
That's the visual that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. The getting into the frame of mind where you call the number thinking a rescuer could be in the area of the phone and hear it and thinking, is this what I can do to help? That's one thing I can do to help.
Yeah.
The hopelessness, the grasping at straws. God damn it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's brutal.
I mean, there was a moment in making that flyer. It was like, his dad wasn't quite sure to get the picture in or something. And like, Terri kind of knows computers, sort of like, I was like, oh my God, thank you. Something I can sort of maybe help with. And we got that part done, but there's nothing. And I'll never forget my friend trying to comfort me to make me feel better. Yeah. Like it's just, she's also one of the greatest people I've ever met. But no one should have to live through that. And, his sisters went on and ran this charity basketball tournament for 10 years in his honor, just like this 3-on-3 tournament. And it raised a boatload of money, for a lot of local community, churches and organizations. And, Tommy was a swimmer and they did it for that. And that was happening all over the city, not to the extent maybe that these guys did it because they're extra dedicated, but there was so much of that, just so much good. It was the first time I had heard the quote from Mr. Rogers where, look for the helpers. It was after September 11th. And that's something I've always taken with me because it's true. I mean, I don't remember the exact quote exactly, but it's when in tragedy, look for the helpers and we'll see them. They're there.
Wow.
True. Crazy, man.
Yeah, definitely crazy. And I guess just one other follow-up too. So I told you I drove in that day. When I finally went back and got my car, which I don't remember how long it was, maybe days, a week, I'm not sure. But they brought it. My car was parked blocks past the exchange even, and in a parking garage, and it came out covered in like debris, like
dust and debris,
which is crazy. That part I couldn't. And that was the thing. Like that smell permeated downtown Manhattan for weeks, like in months. I don't know how long. And even after a lot of the cleanup had happened and everything else, you look out the floor of our building and you look across and you see the other building and the dust that had settled on windowsills. And that took a long time to kind of wash away or like that. But that was weird.
Yeah, the constant reminder, like there's those little things that you just, that pull you back into it you can't really get away from it because it's just so widespread everywhere.
Yeah. And they closed, so that's like the stock exchange closed for the rest of that week and it reopened Monday, and that was sort of like symbolic. But unless you were essential kind of trading floor personnel, you weren't there. So we kind of, it's the kind of thing you wanted to be there. We had another office that we went to in Westchester, and I just remember sitting on a picnic table in a park or something. We must have walked out of the office for lunch and just all sitting there and feeling like useless, and that's not where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be downtown, and just wanting to get back to work and wanting to be there.
Definitely. I get that.
How long did it take before you were allowed to go back?
2 weeks. So it was the rest of that first week, that next week, and then I went back the week after that. And I have in my apartment now, they gave away these posters, and it was the facade of the exchange with the flag, and it said "Let Freedom Ring." And I framed it only since moving to San Diego. It's been like this little tube for 20 years almost.
Wow.
But I decided to unfurl that puppy and put it in the frame, and it's in the spare bedroom.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Scoliosis.
Oh, yeah. So I told you before, we don't really know how to end podcasts yet. Usually
that's tough because that's such a monumental experience. Yeah. It's like you can't just go, "Hey, well, that's a cool story. Let's move on to something new." Like it's like it feels like you got to have some reverence for it, and it's really, I guess it's tough to move out of that. I guess that's the thing that I think most people, they think about it is, I remember hearing Amy Poehler. It was like her first week on SNL, and there's a debate whether or not they should go have the show or not, because it was like just a few days after it happened. And I think she said that she asked a friend or Lauren, she said, I don't know if it's right if we do this or not. And he said, right now people need to laugh. They need to have a way to kind of come together and have some levity and kind of get their spirits back up. So, and it's funny too, because I lived through the Loma Prieta earthquake in San Francisco. And, that was kind of the worst experience that I had been at that time. And
was that the World Series one?
The one where the Bay Bridge, broke, and the Cypress, structure, which was weird because I used to, at that time I was starting to go to San Francisco to watch music a lot, and, go to the Stone downtown in San Francisco and Broadway. And every time we went up, we would go up the Cypress structure. So I knew it really well and knew how long it was, and just realizing how many cars were probably on that when it fell, and again, it was just like this sense of disbelief. And I remember like kind of the end of that week, I don't know why, but we just decided to go see a movie, and the place was packed. Like people just wanted to feel good because I had this big tragedy that just happened, and people just needed that, make me feel good if you can, so it's interesting, kind of what you don't realize what you're going to need in times like that. And I found that kind of, being a musician and wanting to, follow music as a career and kind of hope that was going to happen. I never felt like, well, what's the justification for music and all that stuff. I always thought it was kind of like a little, like it was not really important in that regard. But then when I saw that, I thought, it's really important to have those things. It's a necessary part of life that I think we all need,
For sure.
Funny, I had the opposite experience.
Really?
With music. I had a band. The reason I moved to San Diego, and it's tattooed on my arm. And the singer moved away a couple months before, and we're trying to figure out whether to salvage it or whatever. And we played. There's an old venue in PB called Canes.
Oh yeah, we played there once, didn't we?
Yep. It was It was the first place I saw a really big show after I moved to San Diego. So it was this cool venue, and we played there like September 2nd, I want to say, 2001. And it was a huge turning point where, like, yeah, let's keep the band going because we sold hundreds of tickets. We're doing this and that. And they're like, yeah, can you guys come back in a couple weeks? I'm like, sure. We'll come back in a couple weeks. And then in the middle of that couple of weeks was September 11th. And then we played like a week and a half later. And we were walking zombies. Everyone was walking zombies. Everyone had that question. What should we do this? Is this a weird thing to do? Carrying on with entertainment. Yeah. And no one came, and the guy's like, where's your draw? Meaning, where's your crowd? And it's like, nation's in mourning, pal. I'm sorry if you thought we were going to help you make your payroll this month. Sorry. Yeah. And
it's interesting. I think, the movie I was talking about is I think it was a comedy. I think people just wanted, wanted to change their mindset, and a rock and roll band. Yeah. Sometimes
I know
it doesn't quite fit the bill.
I think Pantera ended their tour and then they broke up. There's just a lot of everyone just kind of stopped and said, okay, I think if there's any struggle going on, it was a good chance to stop and reevaluate your priorities and what do I want to be doing in my life? What's important? And maybe that's the positive spin is to
it's for myself, I know that's kind of what I experienced. It really kind of gave me this sense of like, you got to get your act together and start stop screwing around and get to work, and life is short, and if you want to do anything in this world, you've got to start doing it. So, and then I moved to San Diego, like a year later.
I just realized why I have a hard time ending podcasts when they're poignant. Liam and I interviewed a band many years ago, and they were talking about the lead singer that they had who had passed away. And they played a show, and it was a great show. And they're like, oh, we were so happy. He was so happy. And then, he was gone that night. And we talked like for an hour and a half about this guy. And we didn't ask what he overdosed on or anything like that. We just assumed that, great show, great night. He died the way rock stars usually die. And then, as we're putting stuff, turning the mics off and stuff, we started to ask the questions. It's like, okay, well, what did he, what happened? Who found him? How did he OD or whatever? It's like, oh no, he had a terminal illness. He knew his days were numbered and that he lived the rest of his life doing what he wanted to do. And he went on top doing his thing. And I'm like, we just talked about this guy for an hour and a half.
You never thought you'd bring that up.
Didn't come out. How? So I'm always
way to bury the lead, pal.
Yeah, I'm always like, okay, is there any more life-changing, poignant, wonderful stuff to come out? And I don't feel like you've got the punchline hidden that you haven't gotten to yet. So I'm going to assume that that's not there, but that's why I keep it going for too long.
So, what's the key takeaway to this conversation? Being the dangerous conversation. This is not so necessarily dangerous, I guess. It's just a poignant conversation, and it's interesting because there are dangerous conversations that have come out of that experience for a lot of people. I remember kind of the thing that, I lived in Stockton of all places, but the thing that was circling around kind of where I was at and what I somehow was always seeing in the media was the whole Muslim thing. People like reacting to, that whole don't take it out on Muslim people. Just because the terrorists were who they were doesn't mean that the rest of these people are affiliated with that. And that seemed to really fill a lot of the conversation that I was kind of privy to. So, which was, that started a whole nother conversation about immigration and the rest of that stuff. So,
yeah, there was definitely a bit of that, but I feel like it was, I'm sure I lived in a bit of a bubble, but it was overshadowed by all of the just general goodwill at that time.
Yeah. I think it's, being I was on the West Coast, we didn't have the experiences like, everyone, it was more, you were dealing with more of a direct effect. And I think people on the West Coast were more of like, getting
they could be more
revenge.
Theoretical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of a survival, instinct in there too, for me, I want to remember the good parts of it and not some of that stuff too. So I'm sure that my recollection is clouded by that.
I could, I'm not going to go into it at all in this podcast, but, talking about the outcomes of like the Patriot Act and what's the government's responsibility for listening in on things versus, keeping us safe versus, that's a conversation for another day, but it definitely opened a lot of doors for anyone who had an agenda could find a way to help carry the ball across the goal line with this.
Yeah. And that was part of the fear that you were talking about, I think, Liam, and just how it shifted that. And right now you can fuel that fear to get that thing through that you want to get through. And,
Yeah, they definitely used it as like, they saw how effective that mechanism is, that when people are dealing with, tragic events, like a pandemic or something like that, it's an opportunity for, if you want to, if you got an axe to grind, it's a perfect opportunity to push things through.
Yeah. I had a relative that worked for the State Department of Government and like the security cone. And he was basically like, there's always obviously all kinds of things that none of us will know about. He's like, but you better have a plan. Like next, you like have a plan and have a whistle. Like those are the two things. To get out of the city, have a whistle. And the exchange gave away these bags afterwards. One was a glow stick. There was a whistle in it.
Wow.
I mean, I had that in the desk in my drawer longer than it was probably usable, the glow stick anyway. It's like congealed and gone old, but yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
I think what I've learned from it is just that there's nothing that's going to come out of it to justify, there's nothing. I mean, you can make something poignant. You can always learn from anything, but the ends aren't going to justify the means. It happened. The people who orchestrated it had something to say, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. We don't have to find a way to have it make sense. It's okay if it's just something horrible and trying to artificially find a deeper meaning or something. Out of respect for everything I've seen and learned, I just want to sit back and take it in and be curious and not try to use it.
Make it a thing.
Yeah, it's not a tool in my tool belt to do anything. I want to understand it, and it's horrible, and it is what it is.
For sure.
I appreciate you guys giving me a chance to tell my story.
Sure.
Oh, thank you for deciding to be a part of it. Absolutely.
And you're definitely not a one-trick pony, so we'd love to have you come back and talk about other stuff if you want. There's always a guest panel
I'd say, in my opinion, I think you're my favorite guest so far.
For sure.
Nice. I've seen your other podcast, Liam.
Definitely in the top 10.
What you're saying is you had a lot of competition to win above, right? There you go.
So
tell me a story, Nick.
Here's a story time. Okay. So I was going to have a button for every time we invoke Jordan Peterson. But I didn't want to for this podcast. But I will say that there was one particular video of his I just listened to that basically had a tremendous foundational destroying on my political stance. I don't know. It was a loss of faith moment. So I want to discuss that later on a different podcast. But I've had a very trippy week and a half in terms of the way
that's what I call a cliffhanger.
Yes,
ladies and gentlemen.
the way I look
tune in to find out what he's talking about.
I can move to the couch and you guys can.
I paid for the whole seat, but I only need the edge right now.
I'll say the way I look at politics, the place of politics and party in my life, and what my responsibility is to me, to society at large. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the fact that this is an election year, and everyone's really acting like salvation itself is going to be decided in early November, and really coming to grips with what I disagree with, what I like, what I don't like. So we can, if you want to be around for that conversation, Terry, I know we've talked politics before. Liam and I have talked politics before, so
at length.
Usually at the taco shop.
Yes.
Over spiced carrots.
Yes, loved him.
Oscars. So that's the cliffhanger.
Oscars the best.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember the name because it's in your neck of the woods.
That's true.
Yes. So is that then? Shall I cue the music?
What are we doing on time? It's been a while, right? Like an hour?
An hour and 7 minutes and 2 seconds.
There you go.
So this is a respectable podcast.
Let's see.
I got chicken pot pie for dinner. It's downstairs, cold.
Nice.
So I may have to go get dinner before the next podcast.
Oscars?
I'm on my way. Come on out, Terry.
Come on.
This is a dangerous podcast.
Podcast.
This is the dangerous crap. I just put out the campfire.
Yeah, good.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's it. I think we're off to adventure.
Yes.
Thanks departing
for being a part.
Any departing thoughts, Terry?
No more departing thoughts. I think I've given them.
Okay. All right.
We've got to come up with some closing taglines.
We need to go closing tagline.
Yeah.
Okay. Ozzy Osbourne's got one.
Are you sober now?
No, yeah.
All right, thanks.
No.
Bye.
Can you spell that?
It's got a Q.
It's got all the letters. Right on.
All right, I hit stopped on the record button.
All right.
We are officially